But I'll kind of just give my perspective as the Racial Justice Network, because for us to kind of do and center race and then intersect race with class, gender, migration, sexuality, and all these other things was a very intentional thing of like really recognizing how superficial everything is and kind of how things don't really get to the bottom. So for me, some of the tools I've really seen work, because if I kind of some of the examples of whether it's Stop the Scan campaign that we're doing, whether it's the race and climate justice and the 13th recommendation that we launched quite recently, whether it's even the COVID action that we took after after lockdown was announced, it's been definitely around organizing, and it moves away. I think what Kwame Ture talks about, it's not so much about reforming, because what we see as a problem is how people assume if you put a black or brown body in a room, then problem is resolved, and it isn't, because when these actions emerge, we are all kicking off about something, and then one person is picked in this, whether it's the council, whether it's whoever it is, boardroom, takes them in, and then that person thinks I've made it, and then there's a sense of that is all that we were doing that for, and it doesn't actually change the system. So what I've seen where the people power is what drives the work. So we have all these volunteers, I said maybe 40-year-old volunteers that work around RGN, and all of it is people driven. For the years that we existed, we had no money. The money's only just started to come in now, to kind of, which is why we're able to pay and have more than just myself working at the Racial Justice Network. But for the whole time, it was people power. So for me, a key tool is people power. But to do and sustain people, we have to do what I talked about before of acknowledging and looking at people holistically, rather than what can you bring and not really caring about what else is going on with people. Being aware of privileges, because what I have seen is whether it's gender privilege, whether it's passport privilege, whether it's whatever privileges, class, education, all of those things are the things that divide some of the work that really needs to go on. So being aware of those, and those of us who have certain privileges stepping back. I've seen even within the Black and Brown communities, the xenophobia existing quite strongly. So when we're not able to center the people who are most marginalized, for example, the migrant community, people who are coming through, if we're fighting for policing, we also need to kind of within that talk about something about detention, talk about how, the LGBT community is affected, talk about how the Muslim community is affected, because this whole I think I can't remember the word. I always forget that word about Olympics, trauma, oppression Olympics that comes in, and the whole identity politics means we're not able to build together forward because everybody's searching and looking for their own. Then there's something, so centering the most marginalized is a really unique tool, and that's how we've managed to have more people. And I'm not saying we're the best and we know it all, but I'm using RGN as an example, just because that's where we've trialed and continue trialing some of the organizing tactics. The other one is around creating spaces such as this, because when we're able to come in and be able to share, and we're avoiding that whole gaze and trauma porn of pain and of everything else, we're able to really build and connect with each other genuinely, as opposed to, for other factors. Because what we have seen, and this continues, whiteness still exists within Black and Brown communities. That internalized racism of we're constantly trying to parade or validate or even seek validation from whiteness means we're also shitting on our own communities or pushing them down. So for me, the way we're able to build in spaces such as this has been one of a really unique tool, and sharing of resources and skills. I know what I know now, and this what I know now is not what I knew 5 years ago. I'm constantly learning, and I think that sense of knowing it all and egos and things like that is what also gets in the way of real and genuine organizing. So sharing what I know, acknowledging I don't know enough. But then the last one I'd say is being borderless. So in terms of internationalism, so we've moved now to do work in Kenya and with people in Brazil, and that wasn't by accident. It was also recognizing this, what if we think we're tackling racism here, we need to go back. We talked about the Racial Justice Network does in around colonial legacies and addressing colonial legacies to really get radical. That's what radical is, addressing the root cause and the enslavement of people as well. But being borderless means we're reaching to there to learn from, but also support, because what we have, again, going back to the privilege conversation, is something that we need to also acknowledge. So yeah, so for me, that's kind of what I've seen. I'm not going to necessarily get into because I've seen the bad politics I've mentioned within the good. The things that we've seen go bad is the egos, the self-centeredness, the one person kind of taking it all on behalf of everybody else, all of that stuff we've seen. But for me, maybe to just end on a positive is some of that stuff that I've talked about. Thank you.